Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, will make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
The latest episode of our Gaelic Lives podcast, the third part this week. First of all, we had Gary McDade looking at all things Donegal. Sean O'Sullivan was coming from the Kerry side of things. Today we're going neutral, and thankfully I'm joined by Gerard O'Kane and Rory Grugan, who both know what it's like to play in Croke Park. And actually both times Armagh won, Sam. They were in Croke Park. Gerard, captain of Derry Miners in 02, and Rory obviously more recently last year winning the big one. So thanks very much for jumping on the podcast, lads.
Good to be here.
Rory, I suppose first of all, what was it like to play in the biggest game of the year? Because it was a massive occasion.
Yeah, it's one like you're at as a player. You get the chance to buy the tickets through the GPA and that over the years, and it's an occasion that you love going to, but you're always kind of green with envy looking on, and wondering what it would be like if it was us. And just the build up and that there was incredible. And the occasion, like you're kind of torn between trying to block things out to focus on a performance to go and win a game of football, but at the same time knowing that you might never get back and trying to soak things in that are pretty special. Like, you know, I've mentioned a few times in different interviews and that a couple of standout moments, and like one that always just sticks in my head is turning the corner along the canal, or sorry, along the Cusick side and looking toward the hill and seeing the colour and stuff and the flares in the hill, and just that moment of kind of what it was. So a very special day, and I suppose only that special if you go and win.
And Gerard, as we touched on 02, like Armagh had won it for the first time, and you were captain of Derry Miners, and you always mention that homecoming where you were at the border, so you probably know exactly what the Armagh thing is like as well. So Gerard, the technical difficulties are gone for now. Rory talked about playing in Croke Park, but that 02 thing of Armagh playing, like what's the difficult thing about playing on All Ireland final day and getting over it for you?
Well, obviously I experienced it as a minor, so it's maybe a wee bit different because the place wasn't as full for a start, but this was 23 years ago, so you're probably not as aware of it because social media wasn't even a thing then, and but like for us, like we came down, we had great support from Armagh because for the Armagh people come in they played Dublin the semi-final the day Ray Cosgrove missed the free off the post, and Armagh people generally came early, so Croke Park was generally nearly mostly full for most of the minor game. It was the same for the final then as well. But for us, like, it was just pure excitement. At that age, you're 17, you're maybe not aware enough to take it all in. But the fact that Armagh played before us was another Ulster team. They were making their breakthrough. So Armagh travelled in big numbers, come down early. Probably helped us settle in a wee bit rather than playing the half-empty stadium and a wee bit ghostly, So, I would still meet Armagh people now, 23 years on, and they would still reference that day as, especially people who are older, that day that Armagh played. I remember watching Derry Miners play, and you were playing, etc. So, like, I would have sort of, barring missing the penalty against Armagh in 2010, the Ulster Championship, I would have fond memories of Armagh, that sort of way.
And Rory, you obviously played in the minor final 7 years later, but from the point of view of Donegal coming in, like Ryan McHugh, Patrick McBrearty, Hugh McFadden, Michael Murphy, the only people who've played before, you went in last year something similar against Galway. Is that a factor this weekend, Donegal versus Kerry, or does it come down to the management team as to how you're actually prepared for being there for the first time, the parade, all that type of thing?
Yeah, I was kind of asking myself that in advance of this, like how big a factor is it? You're looking at the hurling last week and all the talk of that Tip had the medals in the pockets and all this type of thing, and that Cork were the ones trying to get over the line. But I'm not so sure. I think the management and the two managers that they are will do a great job of shielding the players from the things that they don't need to focus on. Like, I've given massive credit to our management for doing that for a team of players who had never been in an Ireland final before. They really sheltered us well and got us focused on the important things. And if there's another man or manager in the country who'll do that, it's Jim McGuinness. You know, he'll have them so clear on what their processes are and what the day is going to look like. I'm sure they've done dry runs and known, you know, what length of time these things are going to take, how the warm-ups adjusted. And it's not going to come as a shock to those fellas. And the reality is they've all played on big days like Ulster finals and full houses. I know it's a slightly different thing in Croke Park, but that exposure to finals and I suppose in their case winning them as well, close games will stand to them. And they have that experience of Murphy and McBrearty who've won it and their manager who's taken them there before as a county. So I don't think that's a massive factor. On the Kerry side of things, they for the majority of them have that experience of being there and winning too. So I can't see that being a major factor in the game.
And Gerard, obviously from the Kerry side of things, one David Clifford, I suppose we may as well get the big question up right away. It's a big ask to mark him. The rest of Ireland are trying to find out how to cope with him. Rory, you had your experiences with him last year, but I suppose from a defender's point of view, Gerard, what is the best approach here? Because they've got other fires, but David is obviously the brightest one.
Yeah, well, I suppose you mentioned Rory's experience last year. The game's probably changed a bit from then because of the new rules.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy for 2 or 3 men to get round him just as quick because obviously somebody else is free. I don't know. The day Donegal played Meath in the semi-final, me and the missus and the father-in-law went for a drive after the game, and we ended up in Virginia in Cavan, and the Donegal bus pulled up and they all got out for ice cream. And I wouldn't know the younger lads as well because you're not seeing them with their numbers on, so you're not sure who's who. But Neil McGee, McFadden, and McBrearty was sort of together, and I would know them. And I just caught them in conversation for 10 minutes, and the first thing McGee said to me was, I said, geez, you're going well, all sort of stuff. He says, yeah, but how do we stop Clifford? He says, that's the conversation straight away in the bus. Now, Jim McGuinness wasn't visible. He didn't get off the bus. But I sort of asked him, what will you do? And he says, well, that's for us to sort of figure out over the next 2 weeks. But I would know that you hear the stories about Donegal playing Dublin in 2014 after they beat Armagh. Apparently, Jim McGuinness came in and he slapped down some sort of folder straight away and said, that's how we're going to beat Dublin. He'd been planning for it all year, that day after they beat Armagh in a quarter-final. And I would know that he isn't looking at the Clifford conundrum on first thing on Monday morning. He's been looking at that all along because that's not something you look at and try and plan for it within 10 days. If you're asking me, and that's with all due respect to other Kerry players, like they have other players there who don't shoot the lights out. So like the likes of Graham O'Sullivan, who's playing well. Graham played cornerback in 2022 against Galway. He's a cornerback by trade. He's playing number 12. Mark McHugh, can he afford to sit off him? And maybe I think at some level they'll double team Clifford now. Clifford's at the other side of the field from number 5. Does Keelan McColgan go to 5? Maybe a Mark McHugh sit off whoever's playing right half forward, and they just take the gamble and say, we'll sit a bit deeper inside the number 13 pocket. And every time Clifford even gets the ball, he's forced to turn out wide or flick it back. And if it pops back out to whoever's number 10, then we can push out on him. I don't think they'll leave probably McCall one-on-one with him. Morgan's not tall enough to mark him. McCall's probably more suited to mark him. And Rorty's probably big enough to mark him, etc., but he just wouldn't have experience. So I think they'll double team him some way and just gamble, leaving somebody else free. And once that other person, the balls will cycle back out to him, then they'll push on him, try and get out on him quick enough, hoping that Graham O'Sullivan isn't popping points from the 40-yard arc or 45 yards, which you probably won't that much, or somebody like that. I just don't think they'll do what Tyrone done either and try and pick out O'Shea, try and pick out Clifford and try and pick out the other Clifford and go man-to-man on them. Because while they done well enough in Paddy Clifford and O'Shea, it was leaving Hampsey virtually one-on-one with David Clifford, and it just doesn't work now. Hampsey's obviously not up to match speed. He missed a large chunk of the year, but look at Derry tried it maybe 3 years ago, and Christy McKaig was the stickiest best man marker you could get. and he'd done everything right. He was right on his toe every time he was shooting, and he still kicked 9 points. There's, I think, 4 of them or 5 of them was frees or a mark. So I think they'll double team him, leave whoever out in the half-forward line free, and just push out on him when he gets the ball.
And Rory, obviously defeat hurts, and you have had that card this year, and I would imagine it's a game you thought about quite a lot. But from Donegal's point of view, they've been able to watch Hughes and Tyrone against Kerry with probably 2 different approaches. Does that give them an advantage? And I suppose the second part of the question is, as somebody who plays in that sort of playmaker role and inside at times, is it difficult to go zonal? Does that leave too much open?
Yeah, I've obviously I've looked back at it. I wasn't planning on doing it for a while, but I had to just for something else, and it gives you a good insight into what went wrong. But in terms of the Clifford conundrum, like I think you have to accept now, like Gerard said about the new game, like with 11v11 at the back, you're only going to limit what he does. You're not going to stop him. So it's like it's what you're prepared to accept for what he's going to kick, and how do you get that help defender across? Again, Gerard mentioned dropping that half back in, but I think Donegal would be prepared to back their system. You know, again, I've said it before, I don't think there's anyone who's adapted as well to them defensively by still being a good zonal defence. Like other teams are trying to play man to man, but you're so at risk of being beaten in a 1v1 battle. Like Kerry cut through Tyrone multiple times and could have had any amount of goals. And I think if you play that game, you're running a high risk. Whereas Donegal are really good at condensing the pitch still, even though it's 11 men, and rushing the ball. So they suppose they get across to the different zones of the pitch really fast, even compared to other teams, and are very kind of ball hungry in terms of pressure in the ball carrier. So I think that's what they'll go with, and knowing that they're always trying to more so limit what David Clifford does as opposed to stop him completely. And I think like the talk of Brendan McCole and how good he is will motivate Clifford even more to go out and have a big day. And I suppose he's had big performances in finals before and other ones that he'd be disappointed with. So it's going to be a really intriguing battle. And like I said, sir, at the start, to sum it up, you're only going to limit what he does. And I'd say Donegal are going to hedge their bets and say the other boys won't do the same damage. If we can limit this man even to 7 or 8 points, they're going to back themselves that they're not going to concede 2-3 goals and keep them, say, to, I don't know, 20, 21 points and back themselves to kick 25 or 26.
Do you know, and from that point of view of Donegal, like you played them in an Ulster final, a pressure cooker of a game, packed house, different venue, Rory, but it was absolutely, there was no room at all. How difficult is it to play against Donegal? Because you went all the way, but nearly got there, but didn't. So you have a fair idea of what they have up close.
Yeah, like we've had serious battles with them, especially over the last couple of years, since Jim went back in. And like the thing that makes it so difficult about them is how efficient they are when they get their hands on the ball. And again, I've said this before, but like this is a conundrum around the kickouts and stuff. What do you do now with Patton and the weapon that he is? Like if the ball gets into Donegal's hands, they've got that many quality ball carriers and smart footballers who I think are so well coached by McGuinness and his team that it's highly likely that they convert that possession into a shot now with the new game. So like you have to try and disrupt that some way. So like you can't go totally conservative and try to say like, you know, we'll just give them a handy ball from the kickouts and hope we can stop them at the other end. They're so good at working the ball around the arc until they get the right positions. They've got big players who can take men on in 1v1 situations, outside shooters like Thompson and Langan and Murphy, as well as the obvious strength and depth that they have coming in. So I've said this before again, I think it's a case of mixing up your game. There might be the very odd time you need to do that, but I think like you look at where Kerry get their success, or where most teams do now in the modern game, it's by momentum of like pressing kickouts at the right time and getting maybe 4 or 5 points in a row. And no matter what the keeper is or what distance he has, there are times when you can get the right side of it. You saw that Donegal did it to me, the Kerry did it to us in that third quarter, where you can get a bit of momentum off pressing kickouts and going after it. So I think that's something that they'll really look to do. And just hope that Patton doesn't beat them over the top.
Gerard, do you think, is it a debate for Cialan McGonigal starting? Like he hasn't played since, I think he might have played a wee bit in the group stages, possibly against Tyrone, might have been his last appearance. But like Rory, using your own experiences last year with Peter McGrean playing every game and then a big decision, you know, horses for courses, and you've made that choice. Jared, do you think that's something that Jim would look at, that McGonagall's ability to put out fires might sway his decision? Because it would be a big one.
Yeah, look, it'll be harsh on whoever doesn't start. I suppose Donegal's that fluid and that they can move. Like Kieran Moore was playing wing half forward the last day. Did they have a cornerback number in the Ulster final? Maybe one of them days that they played.
Defender's number, yeah.
Yeah, he was playing wing forward. I suppose Rorty and McCall's the only two that are playing in the full back line all the time, and Morgan and Rorty come up the field all the time. So that many boys are fluid and changing about. But it's maybe no different than if you looked at Donegal 3 months ago and somebody told you Dara Bill wouldn't be starting for the early part of the championship and the latter part of the league. He's the best player they had. He was shooting the lights out against Derry that day. He was very good in the Ulster Championship. He has since lost his place just because they're so fluid, moving boys about. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Keelan McGonigal start somewhere. Who then loses out? Like he's not going to drop Ryan McHugh. He's not going to drop Owen Van Gallagher. I don't think he's dropping Rorty. He's probably not dropping Patter Morgan. He's not dropping McCall. By law averages, does that tell you that what do you call a lad from the Muff that played number 7, Keelan McColgan? Like as harsh on him if he didn't start, but it certainly wouldn't make them any weaker, but it would also show that then the boys' ability to come off the bench, McColgan can make that difference if he comes on, but it'll be a difficult one to see if he does start. Jason McGee comes in, he hasn't started as many games as he would like, but he's probably a man that's played enough big games and good enough experience and around there that it'd be no surprise to see him starting and maybe shake things up that Kerry's not prepared for either. I don't think Kerry had that ability to throw someone from left field, given that the boys that they have in the bench are maybe coming back from injury, they might be a bit rusty, whereas Donegal have, and I think Jim McGuinness has said it, they have the fit full 31 or 32 to pick from.
Rory, now that you've had the chance to look back over your defeat to Kerry, if they do bring a McGonigal into the team, as like you seem to set off Kerry and those 2-point chances, is that something Jim would watch and think, well, if we are going zonal, and and you're talking about pushing the most dangerous man, is that where he might come into the equation there? If that's something Jim does go with, is he the man?
Yeah, I think you can see why he would be tempted to do that. And again, when you're talking about McGuinness and his willingness to make big decisions, like it would be harsh on whoever loses out, say for McColgan, but I don't think he would have massive hesitation in going for that if he felt that it was what's right for the team. And McGonigal has that size. He's a physical presence there. Like he seems to read the game quite well. So like if you're talking about him trying to help out towards Clifford at times, how does he then still help them get pressure on the 2-point shot? Because that was probably where we fell down, where you're trying to get to your shape, and if you aren't quick enough off the line, especially with someone who has the threat of the twos and don't get out, like they can hurt you. And that's the kind of the battle that you have to go with in your own mind and your own setup. Like where Tyrone were more the other way, and like I've already referenced the pitfalls of that setup, and then we showed our pitfalls at the wrong times in it too. So I think it's something that they're just going to have to try their best to do, and definitely you could see why McGonigal would be a good option.
And from the Joe O'Connor side of things, like they've had their midfield issues with injuries, and there's chat if Dermot O'Connor has actually trained recently, so they might not gamble with him because you might end up wasting 2 subs, Rory. But is that something that Jim might put Kieran Moore up against Joe O'Connor with that run ability, or do you see something else where it's Langan versus Joe O'Connor? We're trying to second guess Jim McGuinness here, but what's the sort of options there?
I think Michael Langan is a real classy footballer, and is in all-star form without a doubt, and stood up big time. But he would maybe even be underrated what he could do defensively. I think he could match up quite well against a Joe O'Connor. He definitely has the athleticism for him, and has that consistency in terms of his fitness throughout the year. So I don't think that would be an issue. I do think that Joe O'Connor is actually in Player of the Year form. So it's whether he'll be able to limit him. His running ability in terms of breaking the tackle, breaking a line, is second to none at the minute. And he's a real energy player for Kerry. Clearly they've got their star forwards like the two Cliffords and O'Shea and different people around, but O'Connor's become a real leader for them. So again, I think Michael Langan would fancy his chances to go up against him and like to go to battle with him. But I see Joe O'Connor as in great form, I think he's going to be a big player on Sunday.
That's all for part 2, folks. We're going to take a short break just to hear from our sponsors, Hastings Hotels, and don't forget to tune into GaelicLife.com. We're across all the coverage of the game with a 32-page pullout, and we have a £1 offer for the first month. So tune in there to find everything to do with this final. We've been looking at it all week. We know it inside out, so that's all there for you. So join us back in part 2.
Experience hospitality the Northwest way at the Everglades Hotel. Located on the banks of the River Foyle, the Everglades Hotel is just minutes from the centre of Derry, Londonderry, with free on-site guest car parking. Whether you're here for a family meal, a big celebration, or simply a peaceful retreat, we'll make your experience as memorable as the sights in the city. Visit Everglades Hotel Derry for accommodation bookings, the latest menus, live shows and events, and much, much more. See you there.
So we talked about Clifford, Gerard. There's also Michael Murphy, who's obviously returned, and he wasn't returning for the free gear and a spin around in the bus. And are you surprised he's played as much as he has?
Maybe given the fact that Donegal have played so many games themselves, or somebody told you that they played 10 already, I think, have they?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody told you they play 10 to get here already, and he will play all of them right through, nearly barring be taken off a wee bit earlier the last day, but never given the rest. But then I suppose he didn't play much of the league with their Armagh game the first day he came on. I think that day that
Balbuffet.
Yeah, so he didn't play until round 3 or 4 of the league, and he's probably doing very little training in between. Most of the training he's done is probably busting himself from last November right up to now to get in good shape. You play on a Sunday, you recover on a Monday or Tuesday, keep ticking over, play the next week. So I would say he's rather playing every week and playing rather than training his ass off and that sort of way. But for somebody like Murphy, I think it's important that Donegal have him on the field as much as possible. Like they talk about this spiritual leader, and Rory can talk about it more. I was playing against him up until 15, 16, but I think even since then he's come into his own since then. You look at the 2 years he wasn't there, Donegal didn't perform as well. He's just given them a lift all of a sudden. So I think that as long as he stays in the field and he's staying fit, they can use him in the field, you can use him out the field. And that's the conundrum for Kerry. Do they stick somebody on him that's physically fit to match him, both inside, but physically? Like, I remember the year Derry beat them in the Ulster final. I was working for the press and I was sitting right on the halfway line in the press box. And it was Declan Bonner's last year, I think. And he played him out in that field. And it sort of cost him the game. Like Michael Murphy was my eye line nearly the whole game because of the way the game was played then, 15 forward, 15 back. He was nearly the back man all the time. He was never on full forward, but Derry had Brendan Rodgers on him. And Rodgers scored not 3, he just ran the legs off him. And I think it maybe sickened Murphy a wee bit to be playing that role, and it maybe I'm just second guessing him, maybe contribute to one of the reasons why he stopped at that time. He was just sick of it. Whereas McGuinness has given that more freedom again, given obviously the game's changed itself, but I think for Murphy and I think for Donegal all in, it's probably important that A, he stays in the pitch as long as possible, and B, he plays well. I don't see a Murphy not playing well and Donegal winning. Conversely, it's probably the same conversation with Clifford.
And there's no part of the conversation we're using him as an impact man in this final. No.
Well, 2 weeks ago,
as Patrick McGready has sort of, well, the one Van Galler came back, that seems to be the positional switch where McGready then lost out to be the impact man. But
maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but that day 2 weeks ago, whenever they stopped for ice cream in Virginia, 2 men didn't get off the bus, and it was Murphy and McGuinness. I don't know why they didn't get off. The bus stopped for 20 minutes. It was 30 plus degrees. I was chatting with other men.
Murphy doesn't need ice cream, I don't think, Gerard.
Well, there you go. That's the answer. But I don't know. He come off again, meet that time, and people are saying he was wincing a wee bit when he came off. He came off a bit earlier, but Murphy didn't. Now, the town was busy with Donegal people, And some of the boys remarked that Jim didn't get off because it would be sort of half mobbed in the same way you see Clifford be mobbed at times.
So would Murphy. I
Yeah,
suppose.
so that was maybe the idea, but I just found it strange that 20, 27, 20 degrees, the two of them never got off the bus. I don't know, was Murphy maybe carrying a bit of a knock that they didn't want to show their hand? No, all it takes for somebody to take a photograph, he's strapped up or something like that. Now, I'm second guessing again here, but, you know, I don't see that they would use him in impact the way they used Peter Canavan and 03, the way Tyrone done. I think they want to keep him on as long as possible for as much as possible. And McBrady will be used at some point, but I don't think it'll be for the expense of Murphy.
Rory, you're talking there about like Jason Foley's pace. Like I remember watching the Tyrone Kerry game, and Tyrone seemed to be in a couple of those straight line balls, and Foley was able to come behind and knock it away. You know, did Donegal think about the diagonal ball? And as you know, as the chat has already been, the go more route one, maybe with Murphy early on, a la Mayo 2012. Is that where Donegal need to try and, I suppose, not expose, but try and ask questions of Foley and the boys at the back, because Tyrone weren't able to do that? Or how do you see that?
Yeah, I think first of all, Jason Foley is an excellent defender, and especially in straight lines with his sprinting history. Like it was something Kieran Donaghy talked to us about a lot before we played them in the semi-final last year, and we still ended up getting caught a couple of times by it. And I remember it myself and Donaghy losing the plot on the sideline about your last two steps into the ball. But in terms of what Donegal can try differently, I think early on in a final that's something you can try, because the stakes aren't as high in terms of turnovers and losing the ball, and it can make a team adjust what they're doing. Like if you throw one diagonally in on top of Murphy and he does what he did in the 2012 final, or even in the Ulster final against us, they clearly tried it a few times and it wouldn't have been their MO as such, that they got a bit of joy off it. With the attack and mark rule, it's worth a go if you have set it up that it's coming in from outside the 45. Can you get a goal off it, even a score that just makes the defender step off a wee bit, that suddenly there's more coming out in front? And I don't think Kerry have like a physical matchup for Murphy. Like Foley's a big lad, but he plays more like as a fast, aggressive, like on the ground defender. So it might be something to look at, especially early on, because as it goes on and it becomes probably tighter and more important, they won't be as willing to give the ball away to turn it over. So it's something you maybe try first 10, 15 minutes.
Because remember they had Kerry had isolated the Paul Guinea height advantage in the 2012 example, and I remember you playing Donegal and Clonus, and I think it was a qualifier game, and you had like route one from the first throw in direct. So is that just the best time in your opinion to go for something like that at the start, where
yeah,
not everything's at stake?
I think these 2 weeks that have met a lot, that have a training camp last week, there'll be a lot of discussion around like set plays and moves and what can we try. And the best time to try them is early, because everyone's got a clear head. You know, the call can get passed around, you remember it. Like, whereas you're 20, 25 minutes in and your legs are burning, your head scrambling, like how clear thinking are you? Unless it's maybe the last attack before the half, if they've got something set up. But like I said before, I think early on, you're not too worried about giving the ball away, and you're thinking the reward is worth the risk. So it's definitely something that would be worth trying for me anyway.
Yeah, well, just even on that, from a defender's point of view, like if Donegal did go with that, it means then, say they try one or two on long and high, it means then whoever's marking Murphy or whoever, like Gallon's quite tall and rangy himself, he might have the power in there that the defender will say, oh, fuck, I did maybe mark him a wee bit from behind here to give me a room to get a run and a jump at it, break the ball. Then once the defender steps off to think high ball's coming in, then Donegal change it up and start playing the ball in front again. And that's where then they get joy from playing 3 or 4 40-yard bounce passes in front, because the defenders now think it's coming long. He's starting half a yard behind with a high ball, and changing it up like that gives then Donegal the option of, well, if we go now short in front, our men are in pole position, they want it because they're starting half a yard, 2 yards in front. So I think changing it up like that to start does scramble a defender's head. You know, he doesn't know what's coming next.
And like the thing is, that can only last so long, because if you keep persisting that and it's not working, you're feeding the energy of the opposition team, and like it shows a lack of clarity in terms of playing what you see. Like Kerry scored 110 from turnovers the last day, and like Donegal aren't going to give them those turnovers this time. Like yes, they might try a couple of high balls. We're only speculating here, but they are not going to get 110 and put the house on it from Donegal giving the ball away. Like yes, the whatever bit of long ball early on to do exactly what Jared's saying there. But after that, it'll be the same process up the pitch, get the runners on it, all those loops around the arc until they get the right men coming hard, looping, or a gap being found in between. Someone steps in and kicks their point. I think like that's going to be something that they have to be so aware of.
Because like Tyrone had they had tied down Paddy Clifford and Sean O'Shea reasonably well, but like just as you say, 110, that was just going straight down Paddy Hampsey's channel, and he had to deal with it. And Donegal learned that lesson. I suppose that's the advantages of playing them after those couple of games, as the touched on earlier.
And like it's the getting the ball dead that allows you to reset, because like I think there's some stats going about how dangerous it is now to drop a ball short, like, and the outcomes at the other side, like it might be a minute later, but like it all started somewhere. Whereas if you manage to get the ball dead, you get the set again, and you get that chance to have again, like I've said, multiple possessions in a row. So it's something that to be so guarded against. Like I think, like it mightn't be the prettiest thing in the world, and I know people, like I'm very excited for this final as a neutral, and I know people are as well, but I do think it'll be a bit more methodical and controlled than maybe people are expecting, and it certainly will on the other side too. Because if you're a Kerry, you're looking at it going, right, well, what are Donegal really good at? Like strong running, serious counter attacking pace. If you give the ball away stupidly, so they might just be a wee bit more conservative than they have been up to now with the kicking game and their nerves of a final. So don't be surprised, especially in the first half, if it's a bit more cagey than you were expecting.
32 minutes gone, and we haven't even mentioned kickouts yet, so we need to wrap it up fairly quickly. But Jared, like Shane Ryan, Cahir had a very good article where he was able to kick off both feet and go to both pockets, but like Tyrone closed them down fairly well in the middle, and they might have regrets of not pushing further ahead. It could have been 5-1 up at a stage, but again, is that like, where do you think Donegal stand? Do they push right up because Shane Ryan's got a long kick, or do they bank that he's not as long as Sean Patton, or what's your reading there?
Usually the first 12 minutes, Tyrone ate them up and breaking ball, and I was thinking, fuck, Kerry's not at it here at all, and they're just dominating. Tyrone's dominating the kick out. Now the game started to even itself out a wee bit. Joe O'Connor and all the boys around the middle started to get into it. But I think Donegal might back themselves at the start. They'll not push right up to the point where they're going to get caught over the top, because Ryan maybe is not as long as Patton is. But like, if you have Lang in the middle of the field and you have Hugh McFadden, you've Kieran Thompson, you've 6'2", 6'3" men right along there. They have men that can sort of form a barrier in the middle of the field. And then once the ball hits the deck, now there is an art to breaking ball in some respects. Like Rory's quite good at it. People say, oh, it's just pure luck. It's not. You have to find yourself in that position and work at it. But once, I think Donegal will be looking the ball to hit the deck as much on the Derry kick out, and then scramble after it and try and hit them then. I don't think they'll sit off, because once you sit off and give a team possession, stats show you that they'll keep the ball away for 1 or 2 minutes, especially if they're in the lead, or they'll just suddenly move the ball up the field slowly, and then they're in sort of control. Nearly every team now will press another team's kick out to make it go 50-50. And once it hits the deck, you just have to get boys in. You have to get bodies in around it. I've seen a graphic from the Leinster final at the time that Louth were down by 4 or 5 points at the time, and they really honed in and breaking ball on this at one period in the second half whenever they hit that 2-3 or 2-4 scoring burst. And you'll see every time the ball was in the air, which Meath were good at, Louth had a man in front, the side and behind of it. Law average tells you won the most of them, and I think that's what Donegal will try and squeeze the Kerry kick out. And the same, I think Kerry will try and squeeze Donegal's kick out as well, just being a bit more cautious of the ball over the top.
And Rory, unfortunately, from your point of view, you're on the wrong side of that spell. We used literally, I think you meted the ball for a combined 1 minute over 5 different touches. What was it about them that day? Was it just their sheer hunger, or as Jared said, was it positioning? Were they just, it wasn't, it was rehearsed? Because that was devastating from your point of view.
Yeah, like I think it was rehearsed. It was good coaching in terms of their banks of 4 and where they were, and probably haven't had a look at the type of kick out we were trying to find. And I suppose we were trying to vary it up, but just the different things we were trying were working. Like 9 out of 11 of the kickouts they won, but the other side of it was their ability to convert that turnover kick out. Like that conversion that day was off the charts, like in terms of 2-pointers and just normal points. So that's what I was talking about at the start. Like, where are these games being won and lost? In my opinion, like, and having been involved there for this whole season within the setup, it's around kickouts. Like, the amount of emphasis we're having to put on it now on both sides of the ball is unbelievable. Like, they were always important, but they've gone to be absolutely crucial. So that's where Donegal got the squeeze in Meath. That's where Kerry got the squeeze in us. And yes, it wasn't massively important against Tyrone because it looked like they kind of broke even. It's just your opportunity to get all the momentum of a game and to get yourself set up every time. And Donegal are big men. Like, you'll only have known, having played against them, that they've got a lot of size. They'll back themselves to get the squeeze on because Shane Ryan's extremely good short, both sides, as you've said. And they've good men like White and Obigliak and all who are very willing to make the runs to get free in that kind of bunch and break shape. So I think they're going to say, right, we're not going to give them that option. We're going to go after them and force them long and back our big men and those men winning the break ball, as Jared said, to get it.
Just moving away slightly from the game, Rory, for a minute or two. When you talk about time spent on kickouts, did that change a lot this year compared to last year because of the rules, or has it just been a gradual thing that's been in the game? I'm just wondering, did the rules make a big difference from, I suppose, your own focus?
It's hard to know other setups, obviously, but I can only speak for ourselves. Like, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by mentioning the amount of practice that our keepers and stuff had to do this year. And yes, keepers do a lot anyway, but I would have noticed a marked difference. And in terms of the conversations that you're having as a team, as our management team, and their focus around like possession sources, like, and the amount of them that there are a game in the 50s, whatever it is now, it's maybe even more. They're just so important. And like, the challenge of winning your own ball with the 40-meter arc and having to go beyond that is nearly as bad as pressing the kick out, which used to be far harder because now you obviously have that extra or less bit of space to squeeze. They're just vital, and like, I would have to say there's been a step up in importance of them this year.
And the final point on the game itself, I just remember interviewing Aaron McKay before the Ulster final, and I asked him the question, was the Kerry win significant in terms of your belief? But he did say, was the game before the Kerry game, whenever the B team basically handed the A team, I can't remember his exact words, but he more or less said it was a hammering. But like, did that just cement your bench impact? Because Patrick McBrearty, who's now Donegal's impact man, he referenced Soupy as winning New Zealand All-Ireland, and sorry, the combined bench winning New Zealand All-Ireland. As somebody who's been inside that bubble, you know, is that just talk or is that real?
It's absolutely real, and the confidence that it gives you as a group, like, knowing as you turn around and see a man coming on who's going to make you better, like, and you know you're getting stronger, and like, it's well talked about the impact that the likes of Soupy would have had boys last year and the lift that it gives the crowd. Paddy McBrearty's now doing that too, and it's a very hard thing to have to swallow your pride to accept that role when everyone wants to be starting. But like, it's nearly not even the boys who come on that proves how strong they are. I had a look at it again in advance of this. Like, Jamie Brennan and Niall O'Donnell both didn't get game time the last day. Like, they'd be pushing towards a lot of teams in terms of getting games. So the strength and depth that they have now gives great confidence to the squad themselves, to, I suppose, the opposition looking at, right, who do we plan for, who's coming in, are we ready to get our matchups right when that all happens? And again, it's no different than us last year. When it's talked about enough, the belief system grows with it, and I just think they're in a strong place as a squad in terms of knowing that depth that they have.
And Jared, on the Kerry side of things, like, there was chat that David O'Connor had trained, and Paul Geaney has been on the 26 for the last 3 games maybe, and I'm not sure, to be honest, what the situation is with Tom O'Sullivan, but is there a chance that Kerry, you feel, might start one of those guys or use them?
Yeah, well, the fact that Guinea's been on the
26,
and once they got to the 55th minute of each game, I think they were in control of it at that point, so there's no need to rush him and use him. You know, they probably say, right, we'd like to give him game time, but if both their games had been 1 point at that time, you might have seen him, because if you're on the 26, he's there to be used, because they're not leaving somebody in the stand not togged out unfit. Thomas O'Sullivan, he rolled his ankle against Armagh after 25 minutes. So in theory, he's only been out, as we're sitting now, 3 weeks, which isn't a massive amount. You know, he's only missed 1 game. It's not like Damon O'Connor, where he's been out for that he was injured before the Cavan game and got
Two
hurt in the
separate
throw up.
injuries.
Yeah, he got hurt in the throw up again and went off again. Thomas Sullivan, I'd have no qualms if I was in Kerry starting him, because his injury seems to be more shorter. It's just if he's fit or not, i.e. the injury's healed. So I would imagine if he's anyway good to go, they'll start him, because pace, like the pace he has, the pace Gavin White has, will be massive against the Donegal team as well. To try and both track men, track runners going past them that way, and they try and move the ball forward sharp. Paul Guinea, I don't know. I think they might hold him because he's played little football in the last 6 weeks. And it's a tough place to try and fire you in against a Tigerish cornerback like Finbar Rorty or some Padder Morgan who's going to go the other way all the time. So is Guinea going to have to follow him? So they might hold him back a wee bit. But I would imagine if Tom O'Sullivan's fit, they might start him, I would say. Now, again, that's at the expense of one of the other guys who's playing well and got them there the last day. But such is life. That's what you have a squad for. I say Kerry's boys that aren't in the team that usually are, just could be a bit rusty. Whereas Donegal have lads chopping at the bit, flying, and they've all come in and made a difference all the time. And I suppose you're going to ask us in a minute, who's going to win? I think that could be a difference down the line.
Rory, I forgot to mention this earlier, but you were obviously favourites in a lot of people's eyes, and I expect these to beat Kerry, but like they turned the tables and they had a real aggression, and they talked about being written off and maybe by some of their own people, but a lot's been made of Donegal's running game. Do you think that that's something that Kerry will try and hammer to try and say to the world, look, we've got runners too? Is that something they, like Jared's chatting about Thomas Sullivan and Gavin White, is that something they could actually turn on its head the way they did, I suppose, against Hughes, where they went at the midfield battle?
Yeah,
Psychologically,
yeah,
I mean.
I think you can be guilty of listening too much to the narrative of the way Kerry play football, like in terms of the tradition of it and wanting to kick the ball. Like there is an aggressive, hard running team as you will meet, like in the country, and they have that ability to play the game on the edge. And like it's something Geezer always big on, like he's got a big connection with Kerry football, like that is the way they play. And this idea that like that they're aristocrats and all this, like it's flawed. And again, it's only maybe when you play them at that top level that you see that. So they were able to use that edge against us to give them a cause. And you could definitely see that it was there with them. And I'm sure it's going to be the same again, like the idea that Donegal have this unstoppable running power, the way it's being talked about. And I think sometimes when we are from Ulster, we see the teams more, we maybe know the players and have played against them. You're sometimes in danger of talking them up more and not appreciating like what the teams from different parts of the country can do. So I think it would be a fool to write off Kerry again in the final. I think it's going to go right down the wire.
And I suppose that's the final question. Who do you think wins? If it's 50-50, are you chatting extra time here, or how do you see it going? Because it is a really difficult one to call.
Yeah, I find it extremely difficult. Like there's no point saying anything else, and that's what makes it so exciting. Like in terms of all the different narratives that are there and the intrigue. But I suppose if I'm sticking to what I'm saying and my guns about the squad and the depth, and just with that extra bit that Donegal have in terms of the bit of experience, I just think that they might have enough by the smallest of margins. So maybe Donegal by 2.
Jared, what about yourself?
To be honest, I could wake up tomorrow with a different answer, but I'm sort of in the same camp. Like Donegal had a spread of 12 different scores the last day. Now I know they scored highly and Meath sort of switched off with 20 to go, so they were scoring at will. But I don't know. David O'Connor's or Langan in the middle. Langan's regularly hitting 0.4, 0.5, and I don't know that Kerry midfield regularly does that. They don't the last day, but I don't know if that's a regular thing. And then all around the pitch, I think Donegal have a more even spread of scores. Like Padder Morgan's going to, or has been kicking 0.2, 0.3 a game. I don't see any of the Kerry full-back line doing that. They are over reliant on Clifford, but that's not a bad problem to have given how good he is. But I think they can still afford for Clifford to score 7, 8, maybe 9 and still win the game, because they'll need somebody else to contribute. They'll need the rest of the team to contribute upwards on 12 to be in with a shout, getting that 21, 22 mark, which I don't know what they have, given the way Donegal play. As Rory says, they play it like a foosball table. once they all move in the line, they all move across and they all move back, and not a football table, we can't move forward or back, but they all are that sort of way ingrained that they shift across and they're so tigerish for the ball. I think the Monaghan second half in the Ulster final was the only time that they weren't really like that in Ulster, where Monaghan started to pick them off. But other than that, there hasn't been a time where they haven't really been so tigerish and so ferocious that they know how to wear teams down defensively and still score 23, 24 themselves.
You going Donegal?
Yeah, Donegal. Again, by 1 or 2 now. If me and Rory's wrong, it's not to say that we know nothing, because Kerry,
Good man.
it is that much of a toss of a coin,
Mm-hmm.
and like you could give me a similar argument for Kerry, and I could walk away and say, well, Mal, you're probably right, actually, so it is just that paper thin.
I'm going Donegal by 2 as well, so we might as well all be thrown onto the bus. If one of us is going, we're all going. So we'll be back on Monday, folks, for a review show, and we'll be able to find out who are the All-Ireland champions, why they're All-Ireland champions, and all the various talking points of the game. And before that, if you tune in to GaelicLife.com, we will have a full preview today on our website. Pen picks, interviews, analysis, all that type of thing. And as I say, we've got a £1 offer for the first month, so feel free to join in and find out all about Kerry and Donegal. But more importantly, thanks a million to Rory Grugan and to Gerard O'Kane for giving us our neutral side to Sunday's All-Ireland final, the biggest day of the year. Thanks, Rory. Thanks, Gerard. And hopefully we all enjoy a great game.
Thanks, Michael.
Cheers,
Gerard.
Mal.